Let me ask you something. How many of you were this close to the breakthrough, this close to the promotion, this close to becoming who you were meant to be? And you gave up, not because you were weak, not because you weren't gifted, not because God didn't call you. You gave up because you got tired in the wrong season. And the reason so many people give up here is because here doesn't look like it's working. You see, everybody celebrates the finish line, but nobody prepares you for the hallway where doors are closed, the hallway where prayers feel unanswered, the hallway where you're working, but nothing is moving, the hallway where you're sowing, but nothing is growing. And that's where most people quit, not at the beginning, not at the end, but in the middle. They quit in the process. They quit in the pressure. They quit when the progress gets invisible. And today I came to talk to the person who is standing in the middle, tired, frustrated, questioning, wondering if it's even worth it. Because the reason so many people give up here is because they don't understand what here is doing to them. They mistake silence for failure. And this is where so many strong people collapse. Not because they lack ability, not because they lack vision, but because they cannot interpret the silence. When nothing is happening, when the phone isn't ringing, when the emails aren't coming, when the support isn't showing up, when the progress isn't visible, the human mind starts telling dangerous stories. It's not working. You're not good enough. You missed your moment. But silence does not mean absence. Silence does not mean rejection. Silence does not mean God has changed his mind. Some of the most powerful transformations in your life will happen quietly. A seed does not make noise when it breaks open underground. There is no applause when roots are stretching in the dark. There is no spotlight in the soil. Yet that silent season is where the real growth is happening. If you dig it up every day to check on it, you will kill what was trying to grow. And that's what people do with their dreams. They plant it, then panic. They pray, then doubt. They start, then question, because they expected movement, and instead they got stillness. But stillness is not stagnation. Silence is often a sign that something deeper is forming. When you don't see fruit, roots are developing. When you don't see doors open, character is being built. When you don't see applause, endurance is being strengthened. And if you walk away during the silence, you abort the breakthrough that was forming beneath the surface. The silence tests your faith. Anybody can shout when the crowd is cheering. Anybody can believe when results are obvious. But can you stay committed when there is no evidence? Can you keep showing up when nobody notices? Can you keep working when the only sound you hear is your own heartbeat? Because that is the place where destiny is forged. Silence forces you to confront yourself. It strips away ego. It removes the addiction to validation. It asks you one hard question. If nobody claps, will you still continue? And that question separates the called from the casual. Most people give up in the quiet because they were more in love with the outcome than the process. They wanted the stage, but not the preparation. They wanted the reward, but not the refinement. And refinement is rarely loud. Understand this, when nothing seems to be happening, everything could be aligning. Timing is being arranged. Strength is being built. Lessons are being learned that success will require later. What feels like delay may actually be protection. What feels like absence may actually be strategy. Do not confuse a closed curtain with a canceled show. Your life is not failing because it is quiet. It is forming. And if you can endure the silence without quitting, if you can trust the process without proof, if you can remain faithful without fanfare, then one day what grew silently will rise visibly. And when it does, people will call it sudden. But you will know it was silent strength all along. They get addicted to immediate results. We are living in a generation that wants harvest without waiting for seasons. We want the crown without carrying the cross. We want the spotlight without surviving the darkness. And when results don't come fast, we assume they're not coming at all. That addiction to immediacy is destroying destinies, because anything that grows fast without foundation falls just as quickly. But we don't like slow. Slow feels uncomfortable. Slow feels uncertain. Slow feels like nothing is happening, so we rush, we force. We jump from one idea to another, from one opportunity to another, from one relationship to another, not because we lack potential, but because we lack patience. We have trained ourselves to expect everything instantly, food in minutes, messages in seconds, success in months. But purpose does not operate on your timeline. Calling does not respond to your convenience. Greatness is not microwaved, it is cultivated. When you're addicted to immediate results, you start measuring progress the wrong way. If you don't see numbers rising, you think you're failing. If you don't see recognition, you think you're overlooked. If you don't see quick profit, you think you chose wrong. But the most valuable growth doesn't show up in metrics first. It shows up in maturity, and maturity takes time. When you rush the process, you skip lessons. When you skip lessons, you repeat cycles. And when you repeat cycles, you start believing that success is against you, when in reality, you just refuse to let time do its work. Time is not your enemy. Impatience is. There is something powerful about staying when it's not glamorous, showing up when it's not exciting, building when nobody is watching. Immediate results feed your ego, but delayed results build your endurance. And endurance is what sustains success once it arrives. The truth is, many people don't actually want success. They want fast validation. They want proof that they matter, proof that they're talented, proof that they're ahead. But if your motivation is validation, you will burn out when applause fades. Lasting success is slow cooked. It is layered. It is refined through setbacks, delays, corrections, and adjustments. The delay is not denial, it is development. Every extra day you spend in preparation is strengthening something in you that visibility will demand later. Imagine if everything you prayed for showed up before you were ready. The weight of it would crush you. The pressure of it would expose you. The responsibility of it would overwhelm you. So sometimes the delay you resent is actually protection you don't recognize. Immediate results make you feel powerful. Long processes make you become powerful. And the people who give up here, they don't quit because they can't succeed. They quit because they don't see success fast enough. They confuse speed with significance. They think if it's slow, it must be wrong. But the strongest oak tree was once the slowest seed. If you can break the addiction to instant gratification, if you can fall in love with progress instead of applause, if you can commit to the long road instead of chasing shortcuts, then you will build something that doesn't just rise quickly, it lasts. Because what takes time to build is harder to break. They compare their chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. And comparison is a silent killer. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it creeps into your mind while you're scrolling, while you're watching, while you're observing somebody else win. It makes you look at your beginning and despise it because it doesn't look like their breakthrough. It makes you question your progress because it's not as polished as their platform. But what you are seeing is the highlight reel, not the history. You are seeing the applause, not the sacrifice. You are seeing the victory, not the years of invisible preparation. You are seeing the fruit, not the seasons of pruning. And when you compare your early steps to someone else's mastered stride, you will always feel behind. Comparison distorts perspective. It makes you forget how far you've come because you're obsessed with how far they appear to be. It makes you minimize your growth because you're measuring it against someone else's timeline. And timelines are personal. Purpose is personal. Process is personal. You don't know what they survived. You don't know how many times they failed before they figured it out. You don't know how many doors closed before one opened. You don't know how many nights they cried before they smiled publicly. But you will punish yourself for not being where they are. And that's dangerous because when you compare, you either inflate your ego or deflate your confidence. If you think you're ahead, you get arrogant. If you think you're behind, you get discouraged. Either way, you lose focus, and focus is required for growth. Your assignment is not to outrun someone else's destiny. Your assignment is to fully become your own. When you spend your energy watching others, you drain the power needed to build yourself. You start copying instead of creating. You start chasing trends instead of honoring truth. You start adjusting your pace to match theirs instead of respecting your own rhythm. And every destiny has a rhythm. Some people bloom early, some bloom later. Some rise fast and struggle to sustain. Some rise slowly and stand strong for decades. The timing is different because the calling is different. Comparison makes you impatient with your process. It makes you resent the stage you're in. It convinces you that you're late when you are actually learning. It tells you that you're small when you are actually developing capacity. If you rush to match someone else's chapter, you may step into responsibilities you're not ready to carry. Growth without readiness creates pressure without stability. The truth is, if you focus long enough on someone else's lane, you will drift out of your own, and you cannot win a race you were never designed to run. The people who give up here give up because they feel behind. They look left and right instead of forward. They measure their journey by someone else's milestones, and they walk away from something powerful simply because it doesn't look impressive yet. But your chapter 3 is building the strength you'll need for chapter 20. If you stay in your lane, if you honor your process, if you celebrate your small wins without comparing them to someone else's big ones, you will discover something powerful. Your path may be different, but it is not deficient. It is deliberate. They let emotions lead instead of discipline. And emotions are powerful. They can inspire you. They can ignite you. They can move you to start. But they were never designed to sustain you. Feelings are like weather. They change without warning. One day you feel motivated, unstoppable, confident. The next day you feel tired, doubtful, irritated, discouraged. If your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will always be unstable because feelings fluctuate, discipline does not. The problem is emotions are louder than discipline. Emotions demand attention. They say, I don't feel like it today. They say, I'm not in the mood. They say, this is too hard. And if you obey that voice long enough, you will build a habit of quitting whenever discomfort shows up. But growth is uncomfortable. Waking up early when you're tired is uncomfortable. Practicing when nobody sees improvement yet is uncomfortable. Staying committed when results are slow is uncomfortable. Having hard conversations is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is often a sign that you are stretching beyond your current limits. When emotions lead, consistency dies. You work hard when you feel inspired. You stop when you feel bored. You push forward when you feel confident. You retreat when you feel insecure. That rhythm creates cycles of starting and stopping, building and breaking, climbing and falling back down. Discipline breaks that cycle. Discipline says, I will show up whether I feel like it or not. Discipline says, my commitment is stronger than my mood. Discipline says, I made a decision and my feelings don't get to override it. And here is the truth most people don't like to hear. Success is less about motivation and more about management. Managing your time, managing your focus, managing your reactions, managing your emotions. You will not always feel passionate. You will not always feel certain. You will not always feel strong. But discipline allows you to act strong even when you feel weak. It allows you to keep moving even when your emotions are trying to slow you down. The people who give up here don't give up because they lack talent. They give up because they let temporary feelings make permanent decisions. They quit on bad days. They walk away in moments of frustration. They send messages they can't take back. They abandon commitments because they felt overwhelmed for a season. But seasons change. If you can outlast your emotions, you can outgrow your limitations. Discipline builds trust with yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you didn't feel like it, you strengthen your confidence. You prove to yourself that you are reliable, and self-trust is powerful. When you trust yourself, doubt loses its grip. Emotions are real, but they are not rulers. They are indicators, not commanders. Listen to them, but don't let them drive. Feel them, but don't let them decide your future. Because if you only move when you feel motivated, you will stop the moment motivation fades. But if you build discipline, you will move through fear, through boredom, through doubt, through fatigue, And eventually your results will catch up with your consistency. And consistency is what separates those who start from those who finish. They underestimate the power of pressure. Pressure has broken more dreams than failure ever did, not because pressure was meant to destroy them, but because they misinterpreted it. They thought the weight meant they were unqualified. They thought the resistance meant they were rejected. They thought the difficulty meant they were going the wrong way. But pressure is not punishment. Pressure is preparation. Anything valuable must endure pressure before it becomes valuable. Gold is refined by fire. Steel is strengthened by heat. And character, real unshakable character, is formed under strain. If you remove the pressure, you remove the process that makes you stronger. The problem is pressure is uncomfortable. It stretches you beyond what feels safe. It forces you to operate at a level you're not used to. It exposes your weaknesses. It reveals your insecurities. And when that exposure happens, many people retreat. They shrink back to what feels familiar instead of rising to what they're becoming. But pressure reveals capacity. You don't know how strong you are until strength is required. You don't know how resilient you are until quitting feels easier than continuing. Pressure forces you to discover parts of yourself that comfort never would. And here's what most people miss. Pressure often increases right before elevation. When responsibility grows, pressure grows. When opportunity expands, pressure expands. When influence increases, pressure increases. The weight is heavier because the calling is bigger. If you misread that weight, you will walk away from the very thing you prayed for. Some people beg for growth, but resist pressure. They ask for expansion, but avoid challenge. They want the next level, but refuse the stretching that comes with it. But there is no advancement without adjustment. Pressure also purifies motives. It asks hard questions. Why are you doing this? Is it for applause or is it for purpose? Is it for recognition or is it for impact? When pressure intensifies, shallow motives crumble. Only conviction survives. The people who give up here give up because the pressure feels personal. They think it's proof they're failing. But pressure doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you're forging. And forging requires heat. The weight you feel might be building endurance. The stress you feel might be developing wisdom. The obstacles you face might be sharpening strategy. Pressure forces you to think differently, move differently, prioritize differently. It matures you. Without pressure, you would stay comfortable. Without pressure, you would never grow beyond your current limits. Without pressure, you would never realize how much strength was already inside you. Diamonds are not formed in comfort. They are formed under intense pressure over time. Remove the pressure and you remove the diamond. So when the weight increases, don't panic. When the challenge intensifies, don't retreat. When expectations rise, don't shrink. Stand firm, because the very pressure you're trying to escape may be the force that is shaping you into something rare, something resilient, something unbreakable. And one day, when you look back, you won't resent the pressure. You'll respect what it produced in you. They forget why they started. And when you forget your why, you lose your will. In the beginning, it was clear. The vision was vivid. The hunger was strong. You didn't need applause to move. You didn't need permission to begin. There was something burning inside you, something personal, something meaningful, something that kept you awake at night and pulled you out of bed in the morning. But time passes, delays happen, obstacles show up, criticism gets loud, results slow down, and somewhere between the excitement of the start and the exhaustion of the middle, you forget the reason you began in the first place. When the why fades, the work feels heavier. What once felt like purpose starts to feel like pressure. What once felt like passion starts to feel like obligation. And when that shift happens, quitting becomes tempting. Not because you're incapable, but because you've disconnected from the source of your strength. Your why is your anchor. It keeps you steady when storms rise. It reminds you what this is really about when distractions try to pull you away. Without it, every setback feels bigger than it is. Every delay feels permanent. Every challenge feels personal. But when you remember why you started, something shifts inside you. Maybe you started because you were tired of living small. Maybe you started because you wanted to break a cycle in your family. Maybe you started because you wanted freedom, financial, emotional, spiritual. Maybe you started because you knew there was more inside you than what you were settling for. That reason still matters. The problem is not that the dream changed. The problem is that you let frustration cloud your focus. You let comparison dilute your conviction. You let fatigue silence your fire. And the enemy of purpose is distraction. When you forget your why, you start chasing things that don't align with it. You start saying yes to what looks good instead of what is right. You start measuring success by popularity instead of impact, and slowly you drift away from the very thing that once meant everything to you. The people who give up here don't always quit loudly. Sometimes they just drift. They lower their standards. They shrink their goals. They convince themselves they never wanted it that badly anyway. But deep down, they know that's not true, because purpose doesn't disappear. It whispers. It nudges you when you try to ignore it. It stirs something inside you when you see someone else doing what you were called to do. It reminds you that comfort is not fulfillment. When you reconnect with your why, endurance returns, clarity returns, strength returns. The obstacles don't vanish, but they lose their power to intimidate you, because now you're not just working, you're working with meaning, and meaning fuels resilience. When you know why you started, quitting becomes harder than continuing. The pain has context. The struggle has significance. The sacrifice has value. So before you walk away, before you convince yourself it's too much, go back to the beginning. Remember the hunger, remember the vision, remember the promise you made to yourself. Because if you can reconnect with your why, you will recover your will. And when your will is strong, giving up is no longer an option. So before you walk out of this room, before you go back to the same pressure, the same silence, the same process, hear me clearly, you are not stuck. You are not behind. You are not buried. You are being built. This place, this frustrating, stretching, uncomfortable place is not your grave. It is your gym. It is where weakness dies and strength is born. It is where patience grows roots. It is where discipline gets forged. It is where purpose gets purified. Don't you dare quit in the middle. The middle is messy, but it is also miraculous. Because if you survive here, if you stand here, if you endure here, the same place that tried to break you will introduce you. And when you rise, not if, but when you won't just have success, you'll have substance. Now stand up in your spirit, square your shoulders, and tell yourself, I will not give up here.